Okay. Peace to the God substance. All right. So you're making some good songs out there. Good songs with the heavyweights. Yeah, for those immediately, as you can see, I'm still not at a law school in Mecca yet. I just been seriously very, very busy with the good and the adjustments with everything that is seemingly bad. So you're welcome. Um, so I definitely will be at a law school next weekend. Even bringing back the children to school has been, in the detail of the video here, I talk about my work schedule, but I can't. It's been very difficult to complete my work if the COVID schedules, and all this COVID stuff keeps rescheduling things for everyone else around me, including the children. So I just had to adjust, you know what I mean? But and also now I have to think about the viability of people wanting to go to school. Of course, everyone, not everyone, I'm not gonna say everyone. Um a lot of the reasons are they're speculative. I don't have like real, all the research now. But even with the prevailing logic of what I've known so far, and I said known, not think. um the seriousness of COVID now is really more due to the variants, and the variants being really derivatives born out of those who are vaccinated. Um, there's a lot of research to compile about that as well, because people, they constantly keep telling us that it's the vaccinated, unvaccinated that are filling up hospitals, but most of the people have already gotten this shot. So it does, right? So where's the research though? So I'm going to collect that stuff. I'm going to collect that stuff, make it easy for people to have. You know what I mean? I usually don't have a guayusa tea that late, but there's so much work I want to do. And also, too, I've been trying, everything is adjustments as well. I've been working on things to bulk up, to get stronger, um, to save the wear and tear on the body at the same time, to move faster. So all of these adjustments, even as we go into January, um, with colder weather, the students I'm teaching obviously don't have much of a desire to train as much, So this is where, people say the new year doesn't start technically until the spring, but one of the reasons I love and embrace the awkwardness of the calendar, this is awkward, and for it to start in January, is that these are the cold months. And if you can really learn to prepare and perform as intensely as you can in January, February, and March, in these cold months where you don't want to perform, where you don't want to do stuff, where rightfully, right? And how do you adjust to those things? You know what I mean? Right? So that's important. You know what I mean? Very important. Right? Yeah. So I'm going to give some personal updates about what I do to have this type of energy, right? And particular things, right? Right now I'm drinking guayusa tea, right? And it's a way to get energy, without using coffee and things like that clearly have side effects are not 100%, are not really healthy, right? The other I like too is, and I actually have it in this tub here. Not much left. Not much left. You know what I mean? Some yerba mate tea. You know, but this is a little bit more potent. There's the cover right there. I cut out the cover, and obviously everything is mirror imaged. But it's Cruz de Malta, yerba mate, and I use this one because it's much cheaper and it's very good quality. You know, we're in a new year. I did most of my health stuff, most of my health talk in 2020, really. So you know, I want to start the 2022 with just some little things that you can do to make things more efficient for yourself. Right now, I'm on Amazon, and I don't know why everything I'm clicking is not working. Let's refresh that again too. All right. Okay, there we go. What's it called? I just want to get the link so everybody can see. There's a lot of obviously products to buy, and a lot that I've tried, but this one gives you the most money for it. $12 for 2.2 pounds is a great price, right? Throw that link in there. I can't even throw the link in there because the link is too long. But if you put this in the search engine, you'll get, you can find this on Amazon for a great price. I mean, right? Anything that's in this case though, if you're shopping for stuff like this, anything that's organic, anything that's useful like that. Also the guayusa tea, which I find even better, because sometimes it is a much smoother. It's not as earthy. I'm trying to find the one that I bought because I find a lot of differences in the guayusa teas. But one of the things that I do find that is intriguing is that they're all good. I haven't found one I don't like. But so then now it boils down to getting the one that is the best deal. Yeah, and unfortunately, wow, I guess I haven't bought it in a while because it's lasted. Certainly not the deal that I bought it for. So you see how things fluctuate. Um, Trying to find out how much I had bought it for originally. I know I didn't buy it for $30. Let's see. Okay, I had bought it for $27, which is a great price for 2 pounds. And now, well, they only shot it up a little bit. Now it's $30. So that's still a good price, right? Still averaging about $15 a pound, which is very good for these teas. Right. But let me see. Might as well check. Yeah. It seems in the year that I've been drinking this ridiculously, the prices have gone up since I last got my last haul. Very intriguing. But anyway, it certainly is. It certainly is. It's very good for you. It has a lot of trace minerals, a lot of good benefits, and also for the energy without having the side effects of things. You know, unless you drink things at the wrong time. And this will be an experiment. This is my first time drinking guayusa tea this late, and only because I want to write and read a little bit. But and so I'm trying it. But because I there's some writing assignments that I really want to get to, personal writing assignments. You know. Um, and also finishing my book, which, by the way, Substance is in my next book. Substance 810 up there, right? Who's made great work in 2021 and leading into this year. But so the first thing is to have things that give you energy. Also, look at the foods you eat. I always advocate. It's interesting because I always advocate the Ezekiel bread, right? But Ezekiel bread also has wheat grains in them. They're sprouted wheat grains, but they also produce a wheat gluten. So so knowing your body, even as you eat healthy things. So a lot of times, if I eat more than one sandwich, a lot of times I'll get sleepy and tired because it's the wheat gluten. So a lot of times when I'm trying to eat more food, it's not going to be 2 sandwiches because I don't want to eat that much of the bread, and that's why. So even though it doesn't really, um, it is a very healthy bread, it still has other effects. You know what I mean? That Malik, what ratio to water do you use? Well, with these teas, they steep really well with just a small amount, a very, very small amount. You know what I'm saying? So I can steep about 20 ounces of tea, and I'm probably just using, you know, I would say like a teaspoon. You know, Self I Build. You said reading The Art of Peace. Now I see similarities in certain things you've discussed in class that coincide with the book. Really nice read. I've been training in the martial arts almost as long as I've had this knowledge of self. And The Art of Peace is really a very crucial book in my life. So many of those things I've come to live them. And they have infused into my understanding. Um, and they're part of the reality. So, you know, it's literally a book I read once every year. So in a few days, because I don't wait. I always end up reading all the books I like to read yearly. My favorites, I read them early on in the year. That way, at the second half of the year, books that I would like to repeat every 2 or 3 years, they'll go in those. The books I like to repeat every 2 or 3 years has turned into 3, 4, or 5 years because I've been able to collect so many books that there's so many new things to read that I have access to, which is pretty much almost everything I want. Um, I gotta tell you, D is balling. Peace. It's a good question. I don't really have too many thoughts on the Kemetic spiritual system. You know what I mean? Um, I've read most of the Meta Nature. This is a book I'm about halfway through. The first Meta Nature, and I know there are more. Um, so as far as like the spiritual system, um, I don't think that it's very simple as a day-to-day reality. Um, I think the simplicity of the spiritual system should be about extracting principles very easily, to be able to identify one's principles and the truthfulness of one's way as quickly as one can. I think this is what a spiritual system is. If we were to talk about a spiritual system, you know, um, the Meta Nature has a lot of jewels in it, but I also think this when I read a lot of the Meta Nature, right? I also think that even if it's our people that are analyzing these ancient systems today, we also have a lot of our own bias in how we look at them. Let me give you an example of bias though. If someone goes to ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, right? We're talking about Kemet, ancient Egypt, for those that don't know, right? Kemet meaning land of black, Chem meaning black, right? Literally ends up being the root of the word chemistry, right? One of the interesting things about this, right? For example, if we look at a crown with a serpent on it, and the rays, we assume that the rays are hitting the serpent crown. And the crown represents the pineal gland coming up. However, what if those rays were actually coming from the pineal gland? You see? So what happens is a lot is that Because what happens is a lot is that the angle of scholarship is always based on the bias of the scholar. Does the scholar deal with a mystery God? Does he deal with his own mystery God? Does he think that God is in the sky in some form? Does he think that there's a higher being or thing? So now he's going to analyze ancient religions all as different versions of that. Do you see what can happen now? If a scholar has knowledge of self, he'll go in there and not say, he properly should not go in there and say, well, they didn't deal with mystery gods because they had a greater society than us. No, he wouldn't do that either if he was proper. He would be thinking, well, what type of spirituality they had, because it doesn't necessarily have to be what we think. And I think that's what's lost in a lot of scholarship, you know. In a lot of scholarship, you lose that kind of concept. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know. Okay, so I answered the ratio thing and that. Oh yeah, by the way, yeah, substance. Yeah, wow, humble. Yeah, you know, definitely substance. You know what I'm saying? Incredible work. Um, incredible work. You know, it's funny because the last record I got from you that I collected of you was the album you did with Hobgoblin, and I think Hobgoblin is an amazing producer. You know what I mean? Um, and I was happy to see that you had something with him. You know what I mean? Um, just a joy, you know. And this is why I do this. This is why I enjoy doing this, because there's so much great work that if people knew it was out there, they would absolutely enjoy this more than the shit that they're stuck picking, you know. Mm. People enjoy art sometimes not because, not because it's good, and not because just because it's popular, but also because there's an entire world of it that they can seep themselves into. And most people don't know, and I mean the majority of people that love music, especially even hip hop, they don't know that it's not just one or two quality underground artists that might get tiring hearing one or two, but that it's an entire world. You know what I mean? And more so than ever in the history of this music, we can pick and choose those styles, those vibes, those auras that we want to tap into. You know what I mean? And substance, you're carving a powerful niche there. So that's great. That's great. You know what I mean? Right? All right. And you said substance, you started taking CMOS, black elderberry, black seed oil, oil of oregano. Energy has been incredible. You did it to boost your immune system. It was a welcome surprise. That's right. You know, whether you've taken the jab or you've not taken the jab or any of these things, if you've taken the jab, you have to understand that you most likely are going to get side effects somewhere down the line. The VAERS system, okay, the VAERS system, right? Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System is an official government site, okay? They report that only about 1% of people are reporting to that. So you could technically multiply that by 100. Theoretically, and what scholars, probably the best is Dr. Jessica Rose right now. She gives a very low ball estimate of multiplying it by 30, in the 30s, the low 30s. If you multiply that, if you actually go there and multiply the deaths that have been officially attributed to these vaccines, and other massive adverse events, you would definitely think twice about taking it as far as a booster or more boosters. But what you would more want to do, if you've already taken it, because you can't take it out, what you already want to do is you want to make sure that you have control of your immune system, because the key is that you don't want to cause a cytokine storm, something that causes that synthetic RNA to send the wrong messages and spark that spike protein that has been injected into you the wrong way. Okay, because there is absolutely no guarantee that a synthetic RNA can vibe with the body, which includes what it does, which is mimicking a protein, a synthetic protein that is actually not yours. Proteins which are building blocks to the muscle and the working groups of your body, right? This is important. This is important. People think that if they got it, well, they made that choice and that's over with. That's not how health works. That's never how health works. As long as you're alive, you're always thinking about what you can do to overcome things. And the things that Substance 18 is doing, write them down. The sea moss, okay? It's a detoxifier. The black elderberry is always great when sickness is coming, right? Filled with antioxidants, one of the most powerful berries out there. The black seed oil is a neutralizer, especially in the throat, okay? This is, if you're worried, if you're not even worried about the vaccine, if you're worried about COVID, that means you want to protect your nostrils and your throat and what goes in there, okay? Okay, so even I forgot there was a, I don't want to say what it is. I don't want to say what it is. I'll get you these resources, you know. But if we go on the simplest thing, what's it called? I just did it the other day. What's it called? Hydrogen peroxide. You know, if you have a mouthwash, mix in some hydrogen peroxide and gargle that. Okay, that's going to destroy anything. If you're worried about being in a group and everything, once you get home, if you don't even have anything, you just have the hydrogen peroxide, gargle the hydrogen peroxide for a while. Of course, spit it out, right? That's gonna kill anything that's in there, okay? Especially anything new that entered there. So you want to be able to do that, you know. The oil of oregano, the same thing. These oils are antioxidants. They collect, okay. So, and the rule in health, the healthier things that you add on, they're not acting all separate. They act in unison. You see, and the combination that Substance 810 is has done here is powerful. You know what I mean? You want to have command in your immune system, so that way when you think that you can handle these things, you also have the confidence and the truth that you know that you are, that it is you that is handling it. Okay, that's really important. You know, right? I appreciate that those add-ons D is bowling. Yeah, I appreciate. That's definitely something that I intend to learn more about. Most of my studies about ancient Egypt and most of them in Kemet and the ancient cultures, Nubia, Kush, all of these were really in the vein of proving father of civilization in the knowledge degree in the 1 to 10. A historical archaeological approach as opposed to a spiritual approach. Even before, because I started these studies even before I got knowledge of self, I had thought that these studies were crucial to even dealing with the gods and the earths. And indirectly they are, because they're about us. So I've always been more intent on the history and the archaeology of it. Once I learned that the original man is God, I cared about proving and studying the science of that as a scientific statement, not as a must be, not as a coincidence because other people have done it. And sometimes the historical research for spirituality can stumble because you look for a consistency in what people have done. In the year 50,000 years from now, if someone says there was a guy named Sunez who taught that the original man was God in the black, brown, yellow shade, it must be true because it was back then. That isn't a proof. Okay, that isn't a proof. Mm. As a scholar, what you have stumbled upon or what you have found is great coincidence to a truth. And so, but it needs more. Okay, so remember, logic is supreme mathematics. But a lot of times, logic just takes you to something that is prevalent in number. And we do with mathematics, so we notice these things. Something that is prevalent in the many. But something that is prevalent in the many doesn't mean necessarily that it's true, but it does give a signal that it ought to be studied and verified. And see, a lot of people don't know what verified means. Verified means that you check to see if it actually is true without using just the proof of the many, that the many exist, or that the many have done this, or that there are many of this, right? Many people use the number 7 as a spiritual reality of God, so it must be God. No, that's not why. In the order in that we build mathematically, right? Because it's a system of logic, that goes to how we build. Okay. And that's why the 7 is God. You see? And it also happens to be in line historically. So these things coincide. So I think that's one of the things to take note of. You know what I mean? Just as we take note of, right? Let me tell you something about the meta nature that I find. And you see, it wasn't a small thing that I say it, I find it very a little convoluted, a little confusing as a system. And not that I don't understand it, but that it doesn't have immediate and a simplified way of looking at things. Why is that important? Is because the framework that I'm coming from. Of course, now we're talking about my bias, right? The framework that I'm coming from is this universal flag. So I see that the simplicity of things, right, is how you get to the depth of things, and not the other way around. Not to engage in a system that's complex to understand things simply, but to actually understand, have a lens that's very simple, to then very break things apart, and then offer more detail and complexity to it for yourself, but always be able to encounter things as simply as you can, and then it is more understood. And that's why we deal with supreme mathematics, the simplicity of just going 1, 2, 3, right? Knowledge, wisdom, understand. This is really, really important. All right. And certainly Egyptologists, you know, it's one of the first exercises in analyzing things and getting the best part, because some people are like, oh no, it's no good, and throw it all out. And no, you've got to be able to learn via extraction. That's why when the father said we got to take the best part, that's exactly what that meant. We have to learn via extraction, you know or else you just say everything is wrong, or that's all white man stuff, or that's all this, oh, they ruined everything here. But in a lot of ways, they're the people that have, even if you take a visit to Egypt, you still haven't had the access to things that they have had. So you have to take what they share and be able to actually analyze it yourself. So a lot technically for our spirituality, it's a lot of secondhand research. You have to be good at that too. Not everything could be firsthand. In fact, most of the things that we learn are not going to be firsthand. You have to be able to analyze secondhand research. You see, firsthand research is if you're learning martial arts and you start to learn from martial artists directly. So you would come to me and I would teach you, right? But there's a lot of secondhand research. When Self-I Build is reading The Art of Peace, this is secondhand research, but it is absolutely vital because it's from one of the legends of martial arts, one of the most crucial thinking minds, right? Morihei Shiba, right? So people discount secondhand research, but secondhand research is very crucial in how you, and the verification of secondhand research is very crucial. You have to know how to do it. You have to know how to verify what is good, what type of bias that you're going into things, right? And acknowledge your own bias, so that way you can counter for what you might miss. This is important. It's very difficult to do. Okay, and this is why we're always learning. Malik, you said supreme mathematics are keys to unlock the mysteries of life and the operation systems of life. Supreme alphabets are the language. I don't describe it like that. That is not incorrect, Malik. It is not incorrect. I will say this, right? I see supreme alphabet as an extension of the concepts in supreme mathematics. That's why when people say, "Oh, we don't mix the alphabets with the math," but they've already been mixed. Once someone said A is a lot, right? B is born, all of that. Sorry, but that's letters in the alphabet, okay? And that A is the first letter, and that B is the second letter. You cannot discount that. You cannot say mathematics is irrelevant when you feel like it. The system is there. So it's almost like when all of a sudden going to act, like the 13th letter is not, like M, master, is not the 13th letter. So now mathematics is unimportant. That's not the way. Here's why. Etymologically, I would tell you yes. Let's say if somebody said, what's the etymology of the word mystery? Right? And how does that go with mathematics? The M, the Y got in there, master Y, S. And if you start spelling it out to get the definition, I would not agree with that because we didn't put that word together. But to strip down those alphabets, okay, is very much in the same as the father analyzing the Gregorian calendar for today's math. Okay, he was dealing with the alphabet and deliberately dealing with that order of the alphabet. And you think when you have the babies go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and they're going with the numbers and they know each number, which letter goes with which, that is viable. Okay, that is absolutely viable and a part of how we build. And I think that the more that you build with it, the more that you'll know that you went too layered with it, one may have overdosed with it. If you're putting extra meaning in it and you're losing your proofs. The supreme math even and the supreme alphabet isn't for you to decode things. It is for you to see the insights of things. Okay? It's not a decoder key. You know what I'm saying? It's not this. It's basically something to extract your own principles of things. Okay? So if you said 7 Q is queen, well, what relevance does that have in life? That every time you see any word with the letter Q, it has something to do with queen. No, that's not what you would do. Okay? So let's think about this. When you read something and you see the letter queen, if you see the letter Q in any kind of word, right? You're reading a book and it says, the query showed, oh, there must be something about the black woman because he said queries, and it's not even about that. You know what I mean? You're learning about the quest of, and he's like, oh, the quest, this has something about a female activity. The quest, that's not, what are we doing here? Right? It is the Q has meaning, right? As a lone letter. And it has more meaning to it because it is the 17th letter. That there is also some type of flow within the alphabet. Okay. I remember my enlightener knowledge, he would build in the alphabet and make a complete sentence. It's a run-on sentence, obviously, right? The only way, basically Autumn of the Patriarch by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, which is a fun read. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it's a fun novel because it's basically run-on sentence. I'm in the first 20 pages. There's probably only been 3 periods. It's fun to read this because you don't know when to put it down. It's engaging, but and that's one of the reasons. But this idea of the mathematics and the alphabet not being intertwined is also like a way to waste a good tool. But that tool is to extract the principles even more deeply. So if you see that 1 is knowledge in the supreme math, but the first letter 1 is Allah, then you know that the origins of everything are with Allah. That all of the knowledge really springs up from this mind. What you conceive and what you perceive. There's really only 2 things that knowledge is known. Knowledge is because it is either conceived or it is perceived. You see? And that's why when somebody goes, oh, knowledge is Allah, it links up. It doesn't mean that knowledge is Allah, but it also means that Allah and knowledge is something that is profound together, that has a connection. So these alphabets are really extensions of the principles, the details, and they also provide us with an extended way, a greater extension of making our language viable, like a real dialect, which it is, right? That along with 120 makes it a dialect, right? you know. All right. Malik, you said, do you like Hip Hop DX or any media outlet? I don't really go to any media outlet for any information. Hip Hop DX for a long time has, at best, they try to, you know, um, merge pop rap that has no facets of rap is now the music of the day. Like most of the rap that people call rap is really just dance music. All right. So, but since you're mentioning that, let me show you. Okay. You mentioned Hip Hop DX. I don't have a lot of clips in there, but the clips I have there are important because I'm really a running gunner, though. You know what I mean? Once people stop taking my work, I move elsewhere. You know, um, as far as publications, right? And certainly, substance. True words. Art is to be immersive. Indeed, yeah, we would like it to be, right? You know, Malik. I take all that. He takes except the oil of oregano. That's good. That's good. Indeed, as well as that O2 mouthwash. Okay, okay. Peace, Quatis. Quatis has a couple of questions from last week's class. Okay. Uh, was able to go back through the interactive planning build. Okay. In the first part of the interactive build, you mentioned that part of the decision making is honestly acknowledging one's desires, wants, needs, and then CRX. I don't know what got misspelled. Then matching them with intentions, principles, talents, and resources. Could intentions be replaced with reasons, or would that be an added area to develop as part of the decisions to be made? No, no, because sometimes things have to get done. So if you actually have a reason, that would be a more concrete thing. You know, that would definitely be more concrete. So yeah, yeah, definitely. Right. Such a long question. I don't know if my short answer actually works for that. Let's see. D is bowling. Let's see what you say. Well, you have the pyramids, the MR, and the inscriptions of the Meta Nature to substantiate that answers were very well versed in knowledge of self. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I absolutely don't. I absolutely don't. You said actually, the supreme math is a child of the meta nature. It deals with a universal numbering value. So I don't disagree with that. Other scholars that have written about ancient Egypt have come to that conclusion that they had a numbering system that had values attributed to it. Serpent in the Sky by I'm forgetting his name. In the Sky. What's the name? Serpent in the Sky by John Anthony West, which really analyzes a lot of the work that R.A. Schwaller de Lubitz did, came to that conclusions too. And you see what he thought were the number systems when you read that. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely, I'm not in disagreement with that. Then you said, but I completely understand what you're saying, and that's why I took it upon myself to learn the meta literature, not really rely solely on the literature. You tell us and cross-reference the primary and secondary sources. Well, that's good work. That's good work. You know what I mean? I think that I say this to all the students over the years that the scholarship of our ancient ancestors has to be done by our next generation. So, if we can get if we can go through the universities and get the official, you know, certifications to get in there, to get into these pyramids, to do these things, or find some other way to have the access to get in there, then that's what we do. You know what I mean? All right. Okay, I was just wondering how you would call it, describe it. I think I just did that. Okay, so I'm up to date. I'm getting more up to date. All right, these born. Thank you for those questions. That was peace. Okay. All right, Shaquem, peace. Malik Lowe, half short, twice strong. That's right. You know what I mean? I've always been a fan as a writer of the concentrated, language. You know what I'm saying? The concentrated language. You know what I mean? Quatis, the implementation portion was also another clue on how to approach a goal plan. Sometimes things are being accomplished but not logged, and therefore no model of success can be reviewed. I have some tools here. I have some journal pages. This is the writing assignment I really want to get to because I don't want to start off the year. I have so many books that I'm working on that I'm not doing my journal pages, which is usually, and I want to have for one time I release many books, but also do these journal pages, which has never lined up that way. So this year, I'm actually going to be releasing a lot of books. So there's at least 3 books that will be released this year so far, and I definitely want more. And I just came up with an idea of a book that I'm going to pitch to somebody, a collaborative effort. But that's all I'm going to say. But your journal is an example of the type of implementation of something that can help you develop your other goals. So sometimes some of the tools that you use in planning is you work on something, and here's what I mean. I'm a writer. So what I do is I make, this is something that I want to do, right? And obviously I want to do because this is my 65th journal, right? And there are about 5 or 6 years since I started this that I didn't write anything. Maybe even more, 7 years at least. You know what I mean? A big gap. So my goal is always to write 1,000 pages, achieved last year very easily. What this does is that not only does this allow me to ponder my goals, but it also lets me develop my skill sets for the other goals I know I have. So sometimes when you have your planning, you want to plan things that are good for your development, but they also allow you to ponder and get ready for other goals. You know what I'm saying? I think as a writer, that's like a perfect example of what they would be. You know what I mean? So this showed an importance of how to engage more in what one is trying to create. You spoke about research saying that most likely uh, what one is trying to do, what one is trying to do has already been done. So to spend time researching and looking for previous models of which one can model their own endeavor. Yeah, yeah. I'll give you an example. A lot of people, I get interviewed. I get the honor of being interviewed a lot. You know what I mean? And especially last year. And what people ask, they always ask who my favorite writers are. And the real model for what I do, if I say like what I do is an element of hip hop, there are precursors like Bones Malone, but his writing isn't really the model that I follow. You see? I followed a model that was going to take his hip hop writing of creativity inspired that I could be creative and then be an element. You have to be creative to be an element in hip hop, not just writing about things. But it's actually Amiri Baraka that I followed because I studied jazz so much and followed jazz because I love jazz. And Amiri Baraka wrote poetry. He actually made albums. He wrote all types of things, poetry, prose, now, right? He wrote everything. But he also wrote about the music. So technically, he was doing everything that I thought he should do. He could write creatively, but he could also wrote books about the music. And both of those angles impacted me a lot. The way he looked at music and the way he looked at music as someone that was actually involved as a creative writer, because his creative writings, his poetry, literally is part of jazz culture. So people go jazz music, it's a lot like hip hop. jazz isn't just music. The writings of Amiri Baraka are part of jazz. You know what I mean? Just like when you see people swing dancing, that is part of the dance of jazz. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of the greatest precursors, you know what I mean? Um, to hip hop as a model. So sometimes that was my model. I was like, what he's doing in jazz and what he had not doing, what he did and it was doing, because he was still alive when I figured this out. I'm going to and I can do that in hip hop. And you know, thankfully, I have, and I have, you know what I mean? I have, you know. So a lot of times though, looking for those other models isn't the exact model, you know what I mean? But it can. That's why you have to do research though, you know what I mean? We're learning. I forgot where I read this, but we're living a human life, and learning from other humans is how you learn to live. But the writings of other humans who lived before means that there's countless and countless and countless literature of people who've already did what you were doing, meaning simply living. You know what I mean? So they have advice and they have insights that could show you many things, you know, and that's why reading is absolutely essential. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And reading is different than listening to a lot of blogs and things like that. And not just, let's say if you listen to intelligent things, what happens is this, and I know because I do journalism. I'm a historian. A journalist is a historian of the moment. What happens is that if you just follow things like that, you're following people's insights at that one moment. So there's no retrospect, there's no context. And that's why you have to have a balance of reading, because reading is what really gives it context. When you read a book, there's a context. There's time taken way back to go way forward. And that's why reading is very essential. It's an art. It's a person making a living archive at the moment of their thoughts, ideas, and the same thing. That's why music is so synonymous with that. You know, I don't know if I veered off though, but it's just insights that I you know. Quatis, you said, Mr. Quo. Oh shit, I'm late in the chat, Mr. Quo. So I don't know, when you say I'm currently enrolled in school for that very purpose, I don't know what purpose it is. You know, is it the meta niche? Because we're talking about that. I'm not really sure, but great for you. Whatever purpose it is. Quatis, you said, is that a good way to create the yearly book list? Have you taken that approach, or just that been something that was on the side of what you set out to read per year? Honestly, I read very athletically. I read a lot to try to read for speed, because I set my 52 books a year goal. I work to race to that goal. So like there's a lot of books that I didn't get to finish, and sometimes I just let them be, and I finish them at the beginning of the year, the first couple of weeks, like maybe about 20 here, 30 pages here, 10 pages there. And so I start out the year with a lot of books officially completed. I also read a lot of shorter books in the beginning of the year to get the number up, but also to give myself getting back to reading a lot of different authors consistently. You know what I mean? And you could try out new subjects by reading quality works that you research, quality books that you research, but that are shorter. You know what I'm saying? So I tend to do that in the beginning of the year a lot. You know, also reading books that I read regularly every year. So those get started as well. You know what I mean? So I said last week that you could make your book list by arranging all the things that you would like to read. And if you, let's say if your goal is like 20 plus books, right? That's a good goal. If you've never read that many, that's a good goal. Don't get caught up with number or anything like that. You know what I mean? That's not a good way either. You know, don't get caught up in number, because it'll do you wrong. You know what I mean? But you set a number that is challenging, but something that you could shoot for. And if it's not that big, like a 20 isn't that much. So in this case, so what you want to do is you want to see the length of these books, and you want to plot what type of subject diversity. Because I read so many books, I travel through the diversity. And because I'm reading so many books, I have the books open. You know what I'm saying? So there's many books that I'm reading all at the same time. So what I do is I just try to hop into what I'm not reading. Like I just finished a book called The Life of Plants by Emmanuel Koshia, a French philosopher. And it wasn't about the science of plants. It actually, and I thought it was, but then I was looking at it and I'm like, it's a shorter book, so it'll get me the numbers quick. But then it actually was a harder book to read because it was about the philosophy of how we should look at plants. And so it's a very technical read about the philosophy of how we perceive plants, you know. And what was interesting is that plants, because he's saying plants and flowers are in the outside of the earth, that means that the existence of plants is in the air, the atmosphere, and that they are rooted in the atmosphere and not necessarily the ground, that their existence is in the atmosphere. And so we should change our reality to, instead of, it is not earth-based but sun-centered. So and so he was more heliocentric. So it was very interesting. So a lot of times you're reading books for these perspectives and stuff, because I haven't read like a technical philosophy book on those levels, like from the westernized language. Most of the philosophy books I read are on the eastern side. They're really the majority. So it was a good exercise for me. So that's how I take it. But if you're reading about 20, 25 books, if that's your goal, plot the types of books. That way you have a diversity of, if you have a diversity. Now you plot the diversity, but as the year goes on and you start to have trouble meeting your goal, then you go and stick with the books, even if it's the same subject, that you're enjoying the most. Never stop reading because you're stuck reading books of subjects you don't like. What you do is you read less of that book and more of what you like. And then you try to say, okay, I still have to get through this. Then now you start to assign amounts of pages to get through the books that are good for you, but you find boring. You know what I'm saying? Right? What's funny is that in my life, it's actually novels that take that place. I read almost no novels. And I can't tell you. Let me see. I don't even know. I didn't read too many novels. And the novel I was enjoying is about 1,200 pages. So I wasn't going to finish that last year. It actually was a novel that my brother read, Lonesome Dove, that they made a series of, a Western. I started to read it. I think I'm 300 pages in. And it's a fun read. It's really, really very entertaining. Right? But I didn't finish it though. So it still wouldn't count as a book that I read last year, even though I read 300 pages of it. Right? So you look through your list of what you want to read. If you ever did the list last year, then you want to see not just that if you made the goal or how to beat the goal, how to beat the amount last year, but also what type of subjects are you tackling here? You know what I mean? So, I'm looking through the list and I read a screenplay book that was a long screenplay. It was very good. It's unpublished screenplay. Uh, let's see what other novels I may have read. Yeah, I really didn't last year. I really, really didn't. Yeah, I did read some poetry. So I read two poetry books, which I found very good. But I read poetry. I'm very into poetry, obviously. You know. But so this year I have to read more novels. And that Lonesome Dove, I definitely have that as a goal to to read through, right? Have you taken that approach of just something that was on the side of what you set out to read per year? Yeah, there's all types of stuff that I set aside. Like I said, like I could just count through here and see how many books I have open that are that I'm currently reading, that I have read pages of. One, let's see, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, 24, 25. Let's see. 26. Yeah, 27. Yeah. 28. 29. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. 29. 30. Yeah, so you get the point. 30. Yeah, there's over 30 books here that I'm. No, 31. Yeah, I forgot about that. And a lot of them, the numbers double because I'm a music journalist, so there's a lot of books about music, and I also read a lot of biographies. You know what I'm saying? And those are with the goals. They align with the goals because eventually, though, there'll be artists though that I really think that as the years approach, I will be, I intend to be able to be in the loop to write certain people's biographies, with them. You know what I'm saying? With the artists themselves. So I read a lot of biographies for the enjoyment, but also for the preparation. So I tend to read biographies with that person's music, unless it's hip hop. Like Raekwon's book, I don't read it listening to Raekwon. I never listen to rap when I read because it's other words. But sung lyrics or anything like that is fine. So I'm reading Curtis Mayfield's, Duke Ellington's, a whole bit. I can't even name them all. You know what I'm saying? Right. So a lot of times I'll read those books when I'm in the mood to listen to those artists, and then I'll read their biographies. Right. So there's all types of ways to get into the reading as well. You know what I'm saying? And like reading, I get into because it's my most fun activity of leisure because I get to do two things I love. I love to listen to music, and it's not hip hop. It's always something else, right? And so what happens, it ends up being extremely enjoyable. You know what I mean? Extremely enjoyable because I listen to other music, and then I get to read. Do I periodically go back and read those other journals? Mainly I go back because I want to see references to notes that I had about certain books. You know, um, I don't always do that lately because I'm so busy, and I've never been in a time in my life where the writings that I'm writing now are so surmountable that I don't have time to go back and look at what I wrote. You know what I'm saying? Um, but a lot of times when I finish a journal, I'll look through it. I'll look through that last journal. You know what I'm saying? But every now and then, it's more of an annual thing. Like when I'm putting that journal back into the closet, you know, um, if I have time, I'll go through them, look at them, reminisce. You know what I mean? See some of the things I wrote about. What I feel in my journals, they're not great at telling my life story. My journal is mainly it's filled mainly with my understanding of ideas and concepts, you know, and that's why when I go back, it's really to see what I have thought about other books and other research, right? Quatis, you said, what was going on in that time you weren't journaling? Why did you so much time pass without that type of writing? I had a daughter. I had my first daughter. You know what I'm saying? And I just wasn't able to find the time as she got older. You know what I'm saying? Um, And then I when I got out of the relationship with her, then I got back into journal writing. And then I lost again. I stopped writing in my journals again. I never threw them away though. Always kept my journals since 1998. Then what happened is in the 2010s, I stopped really journaling because I was writing. I finally had my chance to show what a hip hop writer is, and I did. You know what I'm saying? In the 2010s, I probably published at least 400 articles. You know what I mean? At least 400 articles. You know, so the first book I ever published was the Sunez Crates, and I only could publish that EPUB because at the time I couldn't afford to publish that because it was over 300 pages, and I just couldn't afford to publish that type of book. You know what I mean? It, but so I was writing and I was really adjusting, and so it was like I saw it as like I'm not in the gym anymore. I gotta shoot now. I'm in the game, you know. So I wasn't really writing in the journal. You know, now I'm working on that balance. You know what I mean? I'm working on that balance, you know. And it's difficult because I feel like I don't write enough. Not in a journal, but I feel like I don't write enough for my works, you know, or fast enough. But what happens is I write less, but it comes out much more stronger. So that's a good thing. And that's definitely because of the journal. You know what I mean? Right? It definitely is a crazy perspective on the plants, though. If you talk about Amiri Baraka Malik, yeah, he's in Nobel laureate, one of the greatest of all time. Wow, Black Electorate site. Wow, you went back. Kiss FM Sunday. Mhm. Yeah, all right. Quatis, you said I was taken by what you said at the end of the year about planning one's study so that a desired development in any direction can be completed. And that's how I'm creating the book list of the year. Okay. I just had a bunch of books that I want to read, but hadn't set up a number to get through, which may have been the reason why so few were completed. You got to set a time. When I don't train in a coordinated way, my mind drifts and I start writing and start thinking of things to write. If I'm listening to music, I start thinking about that. If I'm listening to podcasts, a good informative podcast, I start drifting off into the ideas that's in the podcast. I don't really concentrate. And the training is lethargical. You know what I mean? So there are different ways to do it. Some people will need to spread out their training little bit by little bit. I tend to do less. I'll rather do less days and do the days I do very intensely and just add things as I go along. So like obviously add-on is different for me. This year I started trying because I'm training students. I want to preserve my body because I train very hard with the students to show them what I'm doing so that it becomes a real training session for me too. So I'll train like I'll have 4 intense training days only instead of 5 now. But that 5th day in the middle where I would be training also, I just do other things I would like to do. So sometimes I end up doing isometrics with my leg, like just holding the leg, stretching the leg. I get in between writing, I do push-ups, you know what I mean? So like this, my day off, I did 1,000 push-ups. So I was like, all right, it is what it is. But which probably equates to about 700 because I'm a terrible counter and I always feel like I'm counting incorrectly. But it's at least, yeah, but it's a ton of push-ups, you know what I mean? But you know, so like when you have goals, you have to achieve them. After I finished my 52 books a week goal, and then I've gone through a lot of books that I really desired. What slows down my reading is because I don't know, my mind works where my mind won't let me read comfortably if I have a writing desire. You know what I mean? So that's when I know the shift, and I let it happen. I'll shift back to writing. You know, um, and that happens all the time. That happens all the time. Right? What subject do you not gravitate towards? To what subject has been the most influential in your life? I'm gonna say this. I don't like I said, I don't gravitate to reading novels, because a lot of times the story isn't real, and I find real life history and the storytelling of real life history is far more intriguing to me. Um, so I would say that, and I really try because, like I said, my brother found me that novel, and I'm really enjoying it. You know what I mean? But I also want to read a lot of classic novels, and a lot of times I'm really rewarded when I read them. You know what I mean? I read Toni Morrison's, for example, Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. The story didn't really engage me about what happens, but the way that she wrote it and some of the portions of what she wrote were, I mean, it was Michael Jordan level. It was amazing. You know what I mean? So when I focus and I get into it, and get past that, it's not important. It's not a real story. When I get past that and start to appreciate the writing, then I really enjoy it. You know what I mean? What subject matter has been the most influential? Probably say, as far as reading books, in the 2000s when I started to train martial arts, I read countless amounts of ancient Asian text, the ancient Asian spiritual text, particularly Zen text, Chan Buddhist text, Taoist text. I read all the ancient texts I could find, and so many of them are so influential to me. You know what I mean? And that's why I like Art of Peace, things like that. So I would say, like, over in my life, that is definitely the most influential subject. You know what I mean? Um, yeah. So, but even it's what's interesting is that today I don't gravitate toward that because I've read all of them. So I don't necessarily gravitate that today. You know what I'm saying? I'm much more diverse in what I can gravitate towards too. It really isn't. It isn't like that anymore, like it used to be. You know. So obviously, I love biographies. I really gravitate toward biographies. They're intriguing. You know what I mean? Especially as of people that I really enjoyed Will Smith's book. Um, like I said, I read a lot of biographies. Carmelo Anthony's book was pretty good. It was good. Mike Tyson's was great. You know what I mean? These are some books I had read last year. There's a big James Kaplan wrote like a 2-part autobiography of Frank Sinatra. And when people are surprised, they don't know that I'm a big Frank Sinatra fan. I think he's one of the greatest singers of all time. And if we had to say who's the most prolific as far as like the most music and the greatest quality, we easily would have to say Sinatra is probably the one to choose. You know what I mean? There are singers that are better, but they don't have that long peak like that of recorded material. And this biography is like the first part, 700 pages. The second book, which I started, is, I mean, how long is it? It was like, it's crazy. Yeah, 1,300 pages. I mean, it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Right? But very engaging. And then I also have a book, a Frank Sinatra book. I forgot the title of it. That I'm going to finish after that. That is about just his music, analyzing his music. You know what I mean? So that'll be important, an important read for me, because people don't really write books about people's music only. And that's really the lane that I'm probably would get into, as far as writing biographies. You know, but yeah, but biographies are like the easiest fun book to read, especially musical biographies of musicians. You know what I mean? Right. But there are a whole host of books. A lot of my books this year, as assignment though, I've been working on that Earth book list. Once you get once the beginner books are for everybody, but a book list that is focused on women issues, their biographies, their specific stories. So I have a lot of books from women that are great that I'm focusing on reading. So a lot of my year is going to be spent on reading those books as well. You know what I mean? But yeah, those are probably, history books, music books about the music, and not necessarily hip hop. Hip hop's probably the books that I enjoy the least. When it's about hip hop music only, it's the books I enjoy the least because I always feel like everybody writes it wrong. That's my competition, so I think it's all whack. You know what I mean? Um, but as far as music autobiographies, I mean, when it comes to hip hop, you know. But Malik, you said in the Now's degree in the 1 to 40, beaten and killed by those who advocated the same mystery God. Hey, that means your peers. You know what I mean? Your peers, they won't believe you. They won't advocate. It doesn't have to be Caucasian. You know what I mean? Beaten and killed by the same ones who advocate that. You know what I mean? It's a combination. It's a combination. And it's something that we see everywhere. You know what I mean? People are Christians. They use it as a shield, right? And so there's a good link up with the degrees. You know what I mean? The using Christianity as a shield, but then also being beaten and killed by the same ones who advocate that same mystery God, right? So crew. This is when you're taking the degrees and seeing crucial aspects linked together. Strong link, right? Do you write your goals down in your journal all the time, Quatis? All the time. You know what I mean? I have mused in there forever. You know what I'm saying? Forever. I have pondered. I do a lot of pondering in there. You know what I'm saying? I do a lot of pondering. You know what I mean? Um, the two things that I ponder the most, well, not two things, I would say probably three things, is what am I going, my work, uh, analyzing my martial arts, the daily regimen, the work, and also I write a lot about being a parent. You know what I'm saying? And how I'm parenting, how I can do this better. You know what I mean? These are the things I ponder a lot. So I use the journal to flesh out ideas. You know what I mean? And if you don't go back and read them, how do you stay focused? A lot of things I write stay very ingrained in me, Quatis. You know what I mean? Um, the more writing I do, the more, a lot of times first time writing things can stay infused in my memory. You know what I mean? And so I don't always have to go back to read it. You know what I'm saying? It stays in there, you know. I found it very interesting that you coupled fulfillment with sacrifice. In order to born something, something must be given up. Is that the same thing as the supplemental component of the build or destroy degree? Yeah, because where you see it sacrifices in the build, right? Once you realize you are what? Um Reaffirming who you are, the true living God, and you build or destroy, that build is also destroying something else, right? A lot of times the sacrifice is there, you know, what you weren't doing, what you had to give up, you know. Yeah, that's definitely in there. To fulfill anything, there has to be some sacrifice, especially when that sacrifice has to be exceptional, you know. Or how is it that better understood, thought out? No, you've got it thought out. You know what I'm saying? You got it thought out. These reading goals aren't so that way you beat yourself up because you didn't reach your goals. It's to just basically remind yourself, am I really reading a lot? You know what I'm saying? Am I really, really reading a lot? Sometimes, because you could have a year where you spent a lot of time reading and you didn't get many books done. That tells you that you don't have a good speed, or that you didn't pick interesting materials, and you might have to be more efficient. Start with books that you are interested in finishing. Um, there are books that I find very intriguing. I'll tell you this. I'll give you a book that I started that I'm surprised that I didn't finish it already. And there's a great history book by Erica Lee called The Making of Asian America. It's a exceptional book about the history of Asians here in America, specifically, and it goes through a lot of the stuff, a lot of the oppression Asians have dealt with, specifically Chinese, Japanese, right, etc., etc., and even has obviously the Indian and everything, all that in there. And for some reason, when I get into the book, it's very intriguing. And when I look, I'm like, wow, I didn't really get too far. So it's like some books that are even intriguing to you, you realize that, I don't know, for some reason I don't read it very fast. So there's also styles of writing that different authors have that don't really engage of a quick read. You know, I've never really explored how people engage with my writing, but I've never written for a quick read. Very rarely. I really write for a more concentrated read, and most of my prose become just a different style of poetry. You know, but that's also something to take note when you read certain books. Malika, wow, I wouldn't have thought you'd really like Blue Eyes, right? I think that's what one of his attributes. Yeah, old Blue Eyes, yeah, definitely. You know what I mean? Frank Sinatra had a lot of issues. You know what I mean? He gets written like he was very Kanye-ish, as far as like his divaness. But I think this. I think that as unlike Kanye, it never really ruined the music. You know what I'm saying? It never really ruined the music. And unlike with a Kanye, artist like him wasn't gonna survive if they didn't do a lot of other things. You know what I mean? Also, too, he's always in the limelight, always in the limelight, and he he he, he did a lot of things that wasn't right and exact as a pop figure. You know what I'm saying? But he, as far as how he dealt with original people, was always honorable. So that was always one thing that I always loved. Um, as far as how he dealt with musicians and stuff, always with the highest of respect and the highest level. So in his profession, he was A1. You know, he was more of a diva if you think about it. Uh, when he was making movies early on, and I think a lot of that is because they were like, uh, not justifying it all, but because they were just like being, musicals and stuff that, and he wasn't much of a dancer like that, and he had to do things, and they were more poppy. You know what I mean? But once he won his Oscar for From Here to Eternity, that movie, I don't know if you've ever watched that movie. So it's a classic film. It's very good, very good. From Here to Eternity. Um, then then he started to be more less diva-ish in movies and stuff. You know, but but we're seeing, just like with artists today, sometimes we see their friendships play out in real life. So some things, let's say, and I'm using Kanye because I don't really respect much of his music and stuff as it goes along. I never thought, when people say he's a genius, though, I really find that to be overrated. You know what I'm saying? Because in the whole canon of music, though, he's very low in the barometer all time of music. You know, it really isn't that next level. And think for a moment. This is one way to learn your how you historicize someone. If they didn't exist at all, would there be things missing in the music? The truth is that with Kanye, not too much, not too much. Like, not like people think. You know what I mean? If they go the chipmunk sound and the soul samples, that's not something he didn't invent that. You know what I'm saying? And a lot, like, for example, Bronze Nazareth was already sampling soul at a higher clip and at a better crate quality. You know what I mean? Producers of his time, if you took them of his time, of his era, that came out in his era, in the 2000s, they were more crucial. If you took away Madlib or an Alchemist from the history of hip hop, you changed a lot of the landscape. Alchemist because of his sample game, and helping to reinvigorate the sample among other people. Madlib because of the massive amount of samples and the use of them, the new uses for them, the new uses for samples. So you know what I mean. So I don't think that's in, but I'm just using him as an example of diviness. You know what I mean. But Great artist though. And also technically, if you really look, Frank Sinatra's style of singing though is very interpretive, which means that he was doing songs in a unique way. It's very much a jazz vocal. It's more pop than, let's say, if we look at the best jazz singers, which are really female. Billie Holiday, which is a very big influence on Frank. Ella Fitzgerald, who he did a lot of shows with, um, and Sarah Vaughan. That's my trilogy. But he was more diverse. You know what I mean? He was more diverse as far as going into the pop realm and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because his producers, I don't think that he didn't have the greatest jazz musicians, so he never made those type of songs. You know what I mean? But as far as his interpretive skills, it puts him as a jazz singer to me on many levels. You know, so his music is really he has a great peak. Like for example, look, I'll give you a little musical homework, right? With probably as big as his "Fly Me to the Moon." This is something that was arranged by Quincy Jones, right? Look up, listen to "Fly Me to the Moon" by Frank Sinatra, and then look up other versions of "Fly Me to the Moon." It could be Nancy Wilson, who I love, is I think is one of the great jazz singers of all time. Sarah Vaughan. Uh, who else sang it though? Other people sang it. Look up anybody that sang it. Marvin Gaye sang "Fly Me to the Moon." If you'll realize that "Fly Me to the Moon" is not a up tempo song the way he sang it. It's a ballad, right? So the genius of Quincy Jones was to realize that Frank could actually interpret, which is only a job you could give to a jazz singer, to take a standard that people know about and say, listen, you're going to sing this in a more up tempo. You know what I mean? And you know, and he did, and you know, it became not just a classic, but the standard of "Fly Me to the Moon." Even though people, when they sing it today, a lot of people sing it today, they'll still sing it as a ballad. They just don't touch that. They don't touch it. I've never seen anybody sing it up tempo, unless they were doing a homage to him. But if they sing their version, they'll sing it as a ballad. You know. So that's why I say that. You know what I mean? But but again, I have so much music that I end up finding other things. You know what I'm saying? I'm finding other things. You know what I mean? So I have a lot of different types of music. You know what I mean? And I take that time to be as educated, extending the palette. You know what I mean? Extending the palette in all things. It's important in reading. It's important in music. All right. That's peace self I build. All right. Travel in harmony, God. Uh Kizar Quaco Laban. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Reading conditions the mind like calisthenics conditions the body, fitness being the goal. I think so. I think reading is it's essential. You know what I mean? I couldn't live life without it though. You know what I mean? What is grafting, and is it a negative term? How does it relate to alchemy as a concept, not necessarily the actual profession or act of? Grafting in the con. Okay, grafting is different in many respects. Grafting is different when you're looking at plants, when you're looking at vegetables, things like that is different. The term is used differently. It is not what is intended in 120. In 120, it is a negative term because you were altering something to get somewhere else. So what you were doing is you were limiting the genetic consistency of things. Okay, the possibility of genes to get to that. So it is definitely negative. Um, it Alchemy is the ability to take things and adjust them or manipulate them into something else. Um, I don't know if that would be a form of alchemy, even though we are witnessing a change, you know. But I would keep it away from that. You know, it's not the same. Malik, you said it, the build degree and then the 13th degree in the 140 is coupled as well, as far as what we know and what they teach daily, that a mystery God does all in the above in the build degree. Yeah, yeah. When you say, yeah, when they don't, yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Bub brings rain, hail, storm, earthquakes. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Absolutely. VC realm, I see you said he said he doesn't read either. I don't know. I don't know the context of that. I'm a little late here. Quatis, you said when you listen to music, what components equate to the quality of it? Is it the mixing, the instrumentals for singers and rappers? How are you judging who is quality and who is lesser? Um, I named my daughter Soul Alma because that is to me the most important quotient of it. The ability to express yourself wholly in it and have a type of style, a type of grit to it, a type of uniqueness to it, you know? And so there has to be a natural uh flow to it too. This takes practice, you know what I'm saying? Even the music I've made, I look back and I say it didn't quite capture everything I wanted to it. You know what I mean? So when I look at the components of music, I don't it isn't something that has to be, it isn't a consistent standard. If you talk about the mixing, some records that are mixed horribly are great. You know what I mean? It's if the intentions are, if what they intended to share is coming across. So if the mixing doesn't sound good, right? But let's say the playing is so good that you hear the instruments blaring and everything is merging. A lot of early 70s salsa records from young bands, they would use the all trombone sound that Eddie Palmieri had. And what happens is that when you're hearing all those drums, congas, bongos, timbales, then you have cowbells, right? Campana, that's called the campana, right? Then you have the vegetables, the other vegetables, right? The guido, which is scratching. Then you have the piano, boom, 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 and that's a rhythm instrument, especially the way they're playing in salsa, right? Um, then you have the singer, the chorus. Then you have a trombone or two or three trombones blaring. You have these records. They have crazy shrill, literally shrill, you know, and sounds amazing. Sounds great. You know what I mean? And it's unrefined and it's wrong. It's technically incorrect. You know, earlier musicians like Tito Puente, they used to always call it kitty bands, but it reflected the grit that they wanted to share, and it influenced what they were going to say. Because now that, oh, you don't respect the way we play, well, we say whatever we want, and now the lyrics are reflecting things that they always wanted to say, something you didn't do in music, right? So that's important, you know. It really is, and it really is the story. I think that a lot of people that listen to music, they don't listen to enough of it. They don't listen to enough. They haven't heard enough of it. You know what I mean? To really take it apart. You know what I mean? With MCs, when I judge rappers, MCs and stuff, it's that difference between rapper and MC. Are they just rhyming, or did they take the time to write it? Are they technically gifted? You know what I mean? Are they doing stuff? Are they delivering techniques so in a way that really shows something? Um, if if they are rapping, what are they actually saying? You know what I'm saying? Are they derivative? Are they original? Do they have original ideas? If they're not so original, do they equate to making actual songs? You know, I guess the Tupac quotient, because again, the ability to put your soul into something, the truest thoughts that you were thinking that could relate, and the ability to convey it though is important. And for singers too, you know, for singers, it's a little bit more technical. So you're listening for the beauty of the tone, the ability to hit pitch, also the uniqueness of pitch. You know, like I was talking about, Alicia Keys made a really nice album, but Alicia Keys makes better music than her gifts because she has a very beautiful tone, but it is not a very unique tone. It's very people can imitate it, but she makes great records still. You know what I mean? Which I think is harder it would be harder, right? So all these things, you know what I mean? There's a lot of facets that go into it. You know what I mean? For hip hop, obviously, it's more about the grit. You know, do they have that rebellious nature that is hip hop? Do they have that shock value to something valid? A lot of people have shock value, right? But it's not valid enough. The ideas, you know what I mean? Right? They're frivolous, you know, and that's where you get something like an Eminem, where there's a lot of talent, right? But it sounds cornier and cornier because the shock value is leading to a very frivolous thought, you know, right? So it depends on what you're doing, you know what I mean? And sometimes the quality sing. Otis Redding didn't have the most beautiful voice, and yet it sounds gorgeous on the ballad because he was able to use it so expressively, right? That's what soul is, you know what I mean? 793. You said, "Damn, been thinking to fly me to the moon." Once you mentioned Frankie, remember that was Old Girl's Doorbell on WKRP and says, you know, I never watched that sitcom. I never watched that. You know, and there's a lot of old sitcoms that I like watching because I remember them now. You know what I'm saying? But never got a chance to watch that. I probably would if they gave reruns of it somewhere on one of these apps. I see they only have it on Apple TV. So, but yeah, I never got into that show. It never was at those times when I was a kid watching TV. Rome Fetty, peace. You are what you eat, what you feed your mind. You become who you surround yourself with. Become your mental. Absolutely. Quatis, I think all of this ties directly into today's degree of equality and is about assessing myself properly, my thoughts, intentions, what and how I want to develop throughout the year. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Alicia Keys makes great music, but as a singer, as also most where it seems like she's yelling and sees that she lacks in technique, you know? See, that's the thing, Quatis. You know, in soul music, the difference between soul music and jazz, right, is that there are pitches and tones where you're supposed to go off note, you know, and that's why there's always wailing in the singing and all that, you know, and that's the gospel influence that Ray Charles infused into it, you know, right? So, you know, I'll give you somebody to look for that has, and it's not a diss to not this at all, not a diss at all. The Alicia Keys, I love their new album. Keys is very much it's a great listen, and it's in my collection. I have all the Alicia Keys albums though. Um, but check out a singer like Rihanna Giddens. You know what I mean? Has all the tools. Is a historian of the musics of Black America, has an operatic tone, like she has an opera level voice and has done opera. Um, so when she makes music, it has a different quality because she knows more. It's a great combination. Somebody that knows, I'm not gonna say more than Alicia Keys. I'm not doing that, but she knows more than the average, even music historian. So she's a valid historian, right? And she actually can sing. All right, when you see Aretha Franklin wail, like when a soul singer wails, that's off. That's off the register. Okay, that's off the register. It isn't with the pitch of the song. You see what I'm saying? So when they're going whoa, whoa, you know, Boys to Men, whoa, that's the difference between soul and R&B and jazz. You know what I mean? So it necessarily isn't going off key, right? But it's off the pitch. It's off, right? It's to show, and it's ways of showing the intensity because now you have to actually perform the sadness of the song, the soul of the song, in a different way than let's say the blues would do it, right? So it's all different ways of expressing the idea, but you know you'll notice those things, right? Just look at somebody that has perfect pitch, perfect tone and everything, right? And can go off, right? Is Aretha Franklin. You know what I mean? Yeah, my singing is A1 though. You know what I mean? Definitely. You know what I mean? you know, uh, Malik, you said, is it our nature to want the best for another, even the devil, trying to reform it, even though he is who he is? I would think so in some way because this is this is our universe. We created all this. You know what I'm saying? Our minds created all this. We're here, and what we created and we ever created. It doesn't exist unless we're here. It doesn't exist. It only exists because we're here doing the knowledge to it, right? So of course, we're always responsible for everything. We cannot reform everyone, but we can always make the. We can always. You cannot reform, but your life can be the forum for anyone that is willing to reform. You see, and that's the key to that degree. You know, you can't reform that. You can't reform devil, but you can't even reform everybody. Yeah, I gotta check that out. Yeah, never got the chance to watch that sitcom 793. Yeah. Okay. Well, see, it's not off pitch. It's just into different keys. You know, keys that are unexpected. You know what I mean? So you could listen to soul singers that really go off, right? But Aretha Franklin is a great example. You know, Aretha Franklin, the legend. You know, really the standard bearer. Right? Rome, how do you see the polarity on soul and spirit? And does music consist of soul and spirit expression? I try to write things that detail what soul is in music. And I equate soul in music as the ability to express all of the emotions that are inside the lyric. And the better they are, they can extract even more out of the lyric than the lyrics even suggest. You know, and it's not just soul singers that can do that with the extremities. It's also the blues. It's also Tupac is a great example. You know what I mean? Who can do that with the lyrics and the way that he moded. You know, people look at Tupac's. Just imitate Tupac. You'll be going to try to get me, to try to kill me, right? His tone, everything like that. This is what soul is, to be able to alter and express things in a way that amplifies the lyric meaning. You see? You know, I saw that a long time ago. Liberace James Brown. I don't remember it though. I gotta go back to that. You gotta go back to that. Rome, you said the world exists from your mind. What you think, become what you feel. You attract what you imagine you create. Indeed, indeed. You know, but because of that, though, we're also subjected to things, and we end up attracting things that we necessarily aren't with either. And that's what the bombardment of oppression does. You know? 793, you said the Deborah Cox Get Here challenge is a great example of the technique and ability only certain souls can tap into to perform, hit, carry, and breathe properly, honoring her 99 hit song. I don't remember that challenge though, but yeah, that yeah, if people because certain songs require it, you know, certain songs require it, especially when a person has sung it to a standard. Mm-hmm. That's peace quartz. Yeah, it's just about hearing different music. You know what I'm saying? It's about hearing different music. Right? Give you some examples. You save these links for later. Roz Nazareth sampled this, and as soon as I found this crate, I became a big Bobby Blue Bland fan, and he was doing it before. Like he really sampled his best works. But I share this because he was in that he was in that barrier where his work was blues but also soul. So it kind of reaches into both. You know what I mean? Obviously, Aretha Franklin. You know what I mean? And I think of a, I just put the whole album here because you should all listen to this. People only know Respect, but they really should hear the other songs. You know what I mean? Which I think every song on this album is more important than or the other classics on this album are more incredible than Respect. But you can see what I'm saying there if you listen to that. And of course, couple that with the Fly Me to the Moon. Listen to other versions of that. Like, yeah, listen to Marvin Gaye's version. A lot of people don't know. People know Marvin Gaye's albums in the 70s, but they don't know that he made a ton of albums in the 60s. And I hope that these links that I share in there, you guys save them and stuff. You know what I mean? That way you can go back to them. And try to keep it simple. Hmm. Okay, 793. Yeah. Um. All right. All right. So let me open up an email that the God Self I Build sent me with a lot of great questions. Uh, he sent me this for last week's class, and I didn't get to answer it. There were so many things in that last class of 2021, but I want to answer these. Where is it? He goes some questions. He gives me a whole bunch, and they're great questions. You know what I mean? And there's been great questions here. How do I see the 37th degree in the 1 to 40 and 38th? You know what I mean? These 30, the end of the 30s though, they're the action degrees. People look at them as like the reward degrees, like what are you gonna get? Nah, I don't see them that way. I see them as like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? These are the real heavy joints. And if you look at it with an eye that way, I'll answer this before I get into the question because I need to take a break. I drank all that tea, right? But you said the 37th and 38th. You know what I mean? Um, I think that the 37th degree is one of the most beautiful statements. Allah is God on earth and heaven above. It's just true, for there is no unrighteous in him, but he is not unseen. He is seen and heard everywhere, for he is all I see. That's to me, that's a mantra. You know what I'm saying? It's a mantra to remember, like yourself, what you are. It doesn't matter what they say, you know what I mean? But we are seen and heard everywhere. And so it's okay to build. You know what I mean? Like this is it. And it links up to the 38th degree, right? Because the reason that the devil was made to show forth and prove that we are seen. You know what I'm saying? It's the degree, it says to make a devil, you know what I'm saying, which is weak and wicked, right? You give him the power to rule, right? Then in one day, right, destroy what, right? Destroy the devil without falling victim to the devil's civilization, right? So they're certainly linked. You know what I mean? It's reaffirmative, right? It's who we are, right? And what are we really building? We're getting rid of the devil. If they cannot be reformed, though, then we're exiling them from our reality. But we are not falling victim to the society that has been made. You know what I mean? What a pity if we, our real problem is that we are actually assimilating and integrating a lot of the mentalities that they have. And that's a big problem. It's a big problem. I hope that answers the question quickly, and correctly to what you were trying to get to there. God. All right, so let me take a break here. When I come back, I'm going to go through the God's questions, okay? And any questions that you have, of course, I'll answer. Okay, I'm back. Before we continue, just want to remind you, since we're starting the year, don't forget the toy. Okay, a quick tool that you can use, right? They got to be Russian bots, right? These are two old jump rope handles, right? You get your rubber bands about this thick, right? Because if they become too thick, they're going to be too tight and you won't be able to get in there. And even if you can, they'll break quicker. You know what I mean? So you get it at the good tightness where you get a good stretch. It'll be difficult to get it here, and you can maneuver them, and you could work out. You know what I mean? And it's a good transportable thing. You could watch TV with it. You could sit down with it. All right. You could take breaks. Right. So always good. Okay. We could learn to have our tools with us. Okay. Okay. Very interesting, complete. Okay, so you actually met somebody that was also all right. What beans you could use? You could eat any type of beans, black beans, kidney beans, right? There's a whole host of beans. What you want is the diversity of beans, you know what I mean? Right. Wrist exercises as well. You know what I'm saying? Because when you turn this way, right, that's getting this. You know what I'm saying? Right. So when you turn them this way, that's getting it. Especially when you stretch them out and turn them that way. I'm sitting down, so it's a little awkward. Right. Absolutely. Seen and heard everywhere. Seen and heard everywhere. Okay. All right. Let's read some of these questions from Self I Built. Let's see. The first question, I think a lot of these questions are pedagogical, and I think you might be might be interested in them. The first question is, how does one remove the ego while in the process of teaching? As I've heard you mention, some people can become very egotistical once they become privy to certain aspects of knowledge. I think that when you're teaching, you have to really love learning. You know what I'm saying? And I love the word. I love looking at words. I love seeing words. Words equate to like puzzle pieces to me. You know what I mean? And I love to see the way words are mounted. And it's so. Besides the joy of words, it leads me to all the things that I don't know, because there's a new combinations and then new ideas, and so I'm more, my life is not focused on needing to share what I know as a validation, right? um but to actually be enjoying learning new things, you know what I mean? And if you could tell, that's where my obsessions are, to hear new things. I'm obsessed with hearing everything, you know what I'm saying? I want to hear everything, you know what I mean? It's why I end up liking jazz so much, because there's so many jazz greats, you know what I mean? And hip hop, I want to hear everything, see how everything sounds, and I try to get as much as I can. You know, um, I think that's one of the ways to get the ego is always there. You know what I'm saying? But showing improving, showing improving. Is it worthwhile? That's why, like, if you're a teacher, if you regularly teach, you should also write in your journal of how you're teaching people. You know what I'm saying? Right? You should always be asking people about things. Like where you're wrong, what you don't know. You all hear me teach and everything, and it always seems like it might seem perfect, where I seem to know about all of these things, and then, but it's also because I know exactly what I don't know, and if I don't know it, you see, because my goal as a teacher, this is very important. My goal as a teacher wasn't to say I know everything that this student will ask, because I learned long ago that when you teach that the man is God, right? We're teaching that the original man is God. That means that every question is up for questioning, right? Every question can be thrown at you, right? That's what we get. And I realized that if knowledge is infinite, we can't answer every question. So then the goal is, right? Put these glasses on so I can read this. Move back a little bit. I have these blue light filter glasses. You know what I'm saying? But I'm a little conscious of them because, like, I don't know if they look a little goofy on me. So I like to look goofy on my own. But but anyway, they still don't let me see from this distance anyway. But one of the when I'm teaching, the main thing that I'm trying to say, like, how am I in this form, is not that I know the essential things that allow me to teach here, but really what I am trying to do is to be able to give forums. So that means that I don't know the answer to every question, but the goal is to be able to guide people so that they can find the answers that they're looking for. Because theoretically, we're teaching every student the knowledge of self. So that means that if the knowledge of self is that each man is God, each woman is earth, that we're teaching them the knowledge of self, then that means inherently I actually don't know the answer to any of these questions. Because what makes self I build God, I don't know it. There is something in there that I don't know why. I know why anatomically, physically, basically, but I don't know the depth of that. Only that person can answer the depth of that. This is what I mean, right? So, what I like to call it is what I call the impossible possibility. Every single person is an impossible possibility. You know what I mean? And it's impossible to be another 793rd. There will never be another 793rd. And yet only he could fulfill that impossible possibility of being 793rd. See? Right? The reality, not just the reality, but who he actually is, no one else can actually do that. And when we start to, no one else can be and live and succeed. Maybe they like, but only he could have done this, is what Malik Lowe has done, right? The God Malik. No one can do that. No one, absolutely. There's absolutely no way. They can do like. And sometimes the greatness in one's life is that they find those particular things that are their impossible possibility that they fulfill, and amplifying that, diving into that. You see? And as a teacher, I know that I cannot teach that. I can only tell you that it's there. And that takes away a lot of the ego. You know what I mean? I don't know if that answers the question. Definitely something to rewind if it's not there. You know what I mean? I see Complete God Allah asking some questions of this. Or whatever I'm saying. Okay. We were talking about the toy. This is a bench press. You get the same feel as a bench press. It's not the same exactly, but it's a bench press. Okay. This here, when you're moving the wrist, if you ever study with me, you know that I consider the wrist movement and the strength of the wrist the way that the hand guides everything. So your wrist strength and your forearm strength that comes with that is very crucial to hitting. You know what I mean? And to defending yourself and to moving your arms. This here, you see this bone here? What happens if you have the speed to turn this wrist? This is what makes this into a block of flesh. This here is broken bone. This here, right, is not. This here keeps the flesh. See? And that's the tongue sow. It goes like this, right? So the moving of the wrist is very important. You know what I mean? Right? So they're not just ego exercises. You know what I mean? But they are crucial to the the inventor of the toy though is a martial artist though. So he definitely made it for that. You said we love the science of life. Live the science of everything in life because we always want to be able to detect the math and all we do. Journals are excellent source for analyzing yourself and how you see things now compared to how you see things. Absolutely. It is required in this class. It really is. I don't read your journal, even if you were here physically. I don't read it, but it is required. You said, can it be they will identify themselves through their knowledge and wisdom? I think so. The more that you express yourself, the more that you are expressed, and not just to the world, but to yourself. And you go beyond the cliches of what you think you are. That's what it means when you destroy the ego. A lot of people think in that ancient teachings that destroy the ego, that it means that you have to bear witness to a mystery God. That's not what it means. You are behind that ego. All right. The second question. Let's see how many questions there are. That way we know where we're at. It's about 10, about 13 questions. So we got time. How much time? Yeah, we got an hour left, so I can definitely get into these questions. Well, let me go back up. With all that you have learned up to this point, what advice would you give a younger Sunez who did not have knowledge of self? Oh boy. I'll keep it real. If I gave myself the advice that I would give, I probably wouldn't have two daughters that I love. So I would not be visiting myself at all. I would say this though. I don't really have regrets in my life. You know what I'm saying? If I go back, I would only go back to do more things for my children, to do it better for them and all those things. You know what I mean? I don't really have any regrets or anything. You know what I mean? Any everything happened, and it happened wonderfully. So I don't, it happened the way it ought to be. And whatever hard times I've had, I feel very honored by the integrity that the younger me showed through all of that, and the perseverance. So that way, in these times of oppression, of these times of mandates and stuff, that this type of revolutionary life that I've struggled to live, I had this more like I've lived naturally and struggled to justify with everyone else. Is very natural to me now. You know what I mean? So the way I am as this older person is exactly what I had hoped I would be. You know what I mean? So if I gave advice though, it would just be, keep doing that. Keep doing what you're doing. So I would not be visiting my younger self, because he would only give me good advice, and then I wouldn't have two beautiful daughters. So you guys can figure that out, what that means, So I had to go through the hell to get them right. You know what I mean? From your experiences, is another question, right? Oh, that's peace, God. Appreciate that. Um, from your experience, what has been the best method in reaching those youths who have been magnetized to the gang street culture? I mean, this is pretty much my entire life teaching at a law school in Mecca, the amount of gang members and like that. What I could tell you is this: if they love the street life, though, right, it's not going to be more beautiful. What you're teaching them. I'm gonna repeat this. Our job as teachers, though, and this is why people don't really teach too many. They teach people that are homies with them and shit. And that is an old way of teaching, I think. And I think that we have to be able to teach anyone. If you look at the people I've taught, though, a lot of people don't really live the life I live. You know what I mean? And because my life is so different, no one lives the life I live. But I haven't lived the life that most of the students, really most of the students have lived. So I don't relate to that level. Gangs, street crime. You know what I mean? The greatest gift of a teacher is to empathize with the student, to have empathy, to understand where they're coming from. See? And I think that, when we talk about my name has Savior of the Universe now, like Savior. My name starts with S. But when you go in there trying to be a savior, it's also a detriment. It's a detriment. We have to propose things, but you also have to have a good discernment of the potential student. You know what I mean? Because I find that a lot of people that teach the knowledge of self, they try to say like this, they don't do this consciously. In fact, I find them to be very weak teachers, right? And what they do is that they subconsciously say, like, this will be a more fruitful gang. This will be a more fruitful place to be. And that's what happens, is that they just indoctrinated them into a religion, because that's the way that this becomes a gang. You know what I mean? Right? The way that I've reached people that have been in gangs and stuff is really by showing them that there is absolute there that there can be success outside of that street life, right? And that there is absolute demise in what they are doing. You see, if you can't really tap into a student's morality, then there is really nothing to teach them. So if they don't care about life, then they value death, right? So you cannot teach them about life. You know what I'm saying? If you're teaching them the knowledge of self, then you also teach them that a lot of times showing them civilization is a way, and that's why we teach it first, because you're showing them that they actually not have really chosen this life, that it was designed for them to be a puppet. You see? And so a lot of that ego is destroyed when they learn that, right? Also, too, you have to realize the weakness that they may have. You know what I'm saying? The things that they can do. But no one really gets taught unless they really want to learn. I found that. You know what I mean? No one really gets taught unless they really want to learn. I don't care where they're coming from. You know? What were some of the things the elders in the nation did to reach influence gangs in a positive, restorative way? They were in there. They related directly to them. You know what I'm saying? These are people that engage in the same activities, and so they related. See? So it was something that I understood, but it's something that I wasn't able to do. You know what I'm saying? If I relate to people, it's not because I did those things. It's because I moved through those things. You know what I'm saying? It's because I was a perfect candidate for them, and it never crossed my mind to even delve into that. You know? My life growing up, though, I was poorer than most of the drug dealers' families that they came from. You know what I mean? So I had more reason to do what they were doing. So it was by choice. It was by the reality. It was by the respect of what I was taught. Like I was taught with a lot of morals, what I like to call chess morals. In other words, if I'd sell these drugs, look at the harm that I do and the detriment that I would do. These are things that my mother taught me. You know what I mean? She would constantly teach about the impact of things. You know? So even if you were to succeed that way, that's why it would be considered blood money or what have you. You know what I mean? She's very intent on teaching that way, you know? And her way of teaching in that way, giving a broader view of things, is probably my first and greatest influence as a teacher, you know? The things that my mother knew, she had a very great way of explaining them, you know? Right? But you're a kid, you don't listen to your mom as much as you should. You know what I mean? As I got older and as I started to become a teacher, I realized that I'm teaching in the same way that she's teaching, you know? Now, the question was, from your understanding, what were some of the characters that the firstborn possessed that allowed them to be so influential in regards to teaching the science? From the firstborns that I know, like firstborn Prince, firstborn Al Jamel, they were strong. They were strong. So they were already alpha. They were already, they were tougher than everybody. You know what I'm saying? And when it was time to introduce an idea that was next level, they had the strength and the command and the fearlessness to introduce it. There's always a right time to introduce things, you know? And they took that opportunity. You know what I mean? They taught the knowledge with the aggressiveness that they were doing all of their other activities. And I think that's what made them so powerful, you know? The question: can we effectively and lastingly reach those brothers and sisters today if we do not have an economic infrastructure in place to generate income for them? especially since the majority of society deems the have as more appealing and worthy. We're still, if we would say we're still in the same position, we pretty much still get a lot of students, you know what I'm saying? That are interested in the knowledge. It's just different than back then, you know? Um, more of our culture, and I don't mean the 5% culture. More black culture is assimilated and diluted every single day. You know what I mean? And the truth is that people crave to have blackness, to have that soul, to have that aura. And that's what the peddling of our cultures does, and the diluting of our cultures does, you know. And it goes hand in hand with the monetary aspect, you know what I mean? Right? But again, teaching based on appeal, monetary, it's never been about that, you know. I think I don't always know why I have students. I know that the only thing that I can do is be successful in my endeavors, and that the students that I would collect would be people that respect a teacher that excels at the highest level at what he does, right? And is able to explain things with the greatest of detail, and able to, make it livable, so that they could try out, so that they could research these things and make it their own. That whatever I'm teaching is not someone doing what I do and what I have taught them, but something that I am passing down to them that is as unique to them and special to them as it was for me. Um, that's really all I could do, and that's all I try to do. You know what I mean? I don't try to do that reverse thing and like, yeah, we did the street thing. Now we go dominate here like this, or constantly validating street life. So like that way, this 5% just becomes a more righteous street culture, and I mean the street culture in a negative way. You know what I mean? That's not you know what I bear witness to. For next question, do you get the same satisfaction of teaching somebody 120 as you do with teaching them degrees of civilization? Um, Honestly, I don't really get particular joy out of teaching. But I don't get joy out of teaching particular things. You know what I'm saying? Um, the joy is in, if I'm teaching something and I really get the sense, if I'm sensing that it is actually something the student really wants to learn and is useful to them, then that's the joy of it. You know what I mean? Obviously, there are things that I might find more engaging to teach. You know, if you're teaching things that are personal to you, right? Martial arts, or certain degrees that I love, or books that I've read, or music, obviously, you know what I mean? But in general, I don't really get, the satisfaction isn't coming from particular things I teach. It's more so going when I'm teaching something that I know that this one thing can have a profound impact, because it's a missing hole, and if they can work on that, there's a lot of greatness untapped and to be tapped into. You know, if I don't, do you feel that your duty hasn't been fully fulfilled if one doesn't have knowledge 120? Well, you have to let that go a long time. You have to let that go if you're going to be good at being a 5%er. That's not our job to take them through 120. You know what I'm saying? As like that's the goal. I don't give myself those grades like that. If you notice, I put the onus on a student for making sure that they go get it, because that's what I did. I went and got it though. I'm not from a neighborhood in Brooklyn that had it. I had to go get it, right? Leave that lettered lung of Medina that was Sunset and go get it. So it's not something that, I feel like it's the teacher's responsibility to give it to you, even though many teachers teach that way, you know? And I feel fulfilled if I can express to the student that anything that you need, you would use this as a tool and a reference to get that this classroom is is a laboratory for your experiments to learn of yourself. you know And if I've given them and explained the frameworks of how to get 120, and then if they do, you know what I'm saying? Of course, there are tons of students. I could tell you, I mean, I could go on for days about all the students that I think really could have learned 120. But when I look back on it and I look through and analyze, there could have been different things I did. You know what I'm saying? But it only would have gotten me a longer route to them not getting 120. Because I really feel that what a students learn is still up to them, you know? Question: the God degree in the 1 to 14 holds great significance for me, and particularly when it says He wants us to think that we are all different. From my experience and brief research, such divisive thing is permeated through most cultures at some point or other. What can one do to remove what that we are different mindset? Does that mindset have its positives? Why not? The truth is that we are all different in many ways, and in the most crucial aspects, though, we are not. And that's what needs to be taught. We are not different as original people, right? However, the ethnic histories, what I like to call the 9,000 miles that you have to swim, are of totally different currents and difficulties. And, you know, some people can swim the 9,000 miles because they're on a nice boat. And that was their journey historically. You know what I mean? They live better lives. Or sometimes you don't know the hell of those 9,000 miles. A lot of us might be looking like a lot of us are black and brown. We look at Asians and we're like, oh, they have an easy time of it. They're the model minority, right? Literally, right? They have an easy time of it. But if you really study it, like I'm thinking of the Making of Asian America book. If you read that book and look at their history, they did not have an easy time of it. And we could say, oh, it was worse for us, not for them. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. You know what I'm saying? Right? So the mindset is to be aware of the differences that are very real, but are not substantial enough to say that we are different. Right? That's what knowledge of self is, knowing the different realities. You know what I mean? Right? That's also part of the great um, pedagogical point of equality I'm talking about today. The palette, extending your palette. You know what I'm saying? The different experiences of original people, right? The different cultures, the different ethnicities, and what they do. You know what I mean? The depth of even your own cultures you may come out of that you don't know enough about, right? What are those different things that they do? Good, bad, why? It's important to know, right? All right. Another question. It is advocated that we save self first. However, how can one be mindful that does not morph into becoming selfish? In my opinion, there are always things that we can save ourselves from. What do you think the main things are that we should focus on saving ourselves from in order to move in a more selfless and assistive way? Um, I think the one I would answer that by looking at how I teach my children. You know, I try to teach them to build themselves in such a way where, and of course, I was able to teach my oldest daughter this in such a way where you could choose the life that you want to live and that you would be happy with. And from that moment, then you could share things with others. But along the way, you are helping others along the way. So it isn't just like do for me and then when you're selfish, it's more because you're assuming that you haven't achieved the peak of what you want, and so you're deliberately keeping things that others could use and that really would have very little impact. You know what I mean? From helping you and with hurting you. And the truth is, a lot of people don't understand that when you teach, though, you actually clarify the depth of what you know. Okay. And I can say that from absolute experience, you know. But this, when I give you the build awareness square plus lesson, and the last one, the fifth thing to really do the knowledge to, is right, because it's eat, train, read, write, and then the last is share. When I put that there because sometimes you don't know how you're sharing with yourself and with others, and that's something to always check. You know, that's something to always check. Are you really, we're of this world and we're responsible for it. You know, we're also responsible for ourselves first and foremost, or else we cannot be responsible for anything else that we've created. Mhm. Indeed, that's piece complete. Yeah, definitely a degree to look at as far as our divisions. All right, I hope that answered the question there. You know what I'm saying? Mm. Question: You have stressed the importance of knowing that God is a creator, therefore we must create. What are then some of the main things you had think one should be creating in order to have the most effective impact? I think one should engage in other creative methods. So when it could be whack. All this could be whack. Like a lot of people don't know. They wouldn't. I don't know if to be surprised, but like I engage in a lot of creative efforts. Obviously, I write books. I write literature. I write poetry, all that kind of stuff. Right. I write prose. I do martial arts, which is a creative. It's a creative art. But I also mess around with playing instruments. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I do stuff like that. So something that is out of the box for what I normally have been doing, and I try new things. So it's always to be in the creative pursuits because that will you know it will augment the others and the other things that you're doing. You know, but the point is that your life is created, and so you practice other ways of creating because it emphasizes that. You know what I mean? Our life is our life is based on creation. You know what I mean? And so everything that we do, we're creating something. You know, we are creating at all times. You know, right? Okay. Question: What mechanisms or tools from your experience would you suggest are best at fostering critical thinking in our youth? Good parenting. You know what I mean? Watching a show. Sometimes I do like I do what my mother did. I'll stop a show and talk about it. Sounds crazy, right? But I'll talk about it. If I see a concept or things like this, I'll stop it and I get them used to that. Um, Critical thinking skills. If they're doing something, or kids, their work is, there's often said by educators that children's work is their play. When watch your kids play and the scenarios that they come up with, sometimes you can stop them there and ask them, well, why are they doing that scenario? What's in there? Why are they doing that? You see, when you get a child to explain themselves, just like any student, you in getting them to explain themselves, they're also what? They're critically analyzing what they have chosen. Or they're coming to the realization that they're not really sure how they came up with that. Right. And then now you can show them that, listen, you're just doing what you saw here, like the conditioning aspect. At a very young age, you can show them that, you have to be careful what you watch because you could just do what you watch. Right. Hope that begins to answer critical thinking as well. Is really having the ability to analyze scenarios, what ifs, the way people feel, right? Getting a child's understanding with the things that they watch and they see, you know, and that's really important. Question: What are the most challenging aspects of being a teacher? I don't know if anything I said is not challenging, right? Right? Isn't there's all of that is challenging. All of that is challenging. I think a teacher has to be able to articulate things, to be able to describe things, to be able to detail things. Just like I haven't read these questions at all, so you're seeing you all are learning from me, but you're seeing me teach, off the whim, And this is I do it like that because I've done it all the time. I don't have to read this in advance because I'm so used to teaching in this fashion. you know, and being very comfortable with your thoughts. That's why journal writing is so important, because I'm so comfortable with my principles, my ideas, explaining my ideas countless times. So what happens? You know what I mean? Right? So, right. So, the, I think the most difficult aspects of being a teacher is before the explaining, the proper explaining, and reaching a student in a way that that relates to them through your empathy, what have you, is to be able to pick the right understanding. What is the right insight, the right knowledge at the moment that will be illuminating at that moment, you know, and that's part of it. Um, a teacher has to be very aware of what he knows and when he's going to share it. You know, overcoming that adversity is writing more about the things you know. You see, so I don't have this prepared. What I have prepared though is I'm always preparing a way to remember more so what I learned via understanding. In other words, I remember things by how I understand them, by having an understanding attached to them as I go along. That's why I write notes in my book and I go back to the books and I write about them. Okay. Accumulating understandings, you know, and that's where a teacher's lessons are born. The plus lessons that I've written, they're all accumulated understandings of this fashion. That's how you overcome adversity. You see? So now something that has become a vital tool that has worked now can become a plus lesson, and now I could just go to it. You know what I mean? That's why. Mhm. As a father, what things do you think are the most valuable for a child to learn? It sounds corny or it sounds obvious, but the most important thing that a child needs to learn is that you love them at all times, even when you're not there. That the things that aren't done with them are done out of love, that they have a connection, showing the connective tissue between your life and the love that you have for them is very crucial. If you can do that as a father, when the things that we do are very disconnected from what they, and as a father of two children that I did not that I did not and do not did not have not been able to raise, have not and can am not able to raise daily, that's very important in the connection. You know what I'm saying? Right? Some parents in this fashion, some fathers in this fashion are okay if that they're missed, you know, um, and they feel valued because they're needed, you know, and they're valued because they're needed. But I think that the child needs to know that you'd be ready to show them exactly what they need. You know what I mean? And that you have been living a life that is preparing it to show them that. You see? I think that I don't think it has been that hard. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it has been that hard to share that. You know what I'm saying? Because I think I teach my children that they are individual beings, and I often say this. I've always told my daughters that I don't love them because they're my children. You know what I mean? That is the immediate love of responsibility, the responsibility of love that comes with them. But I ended up truly loving them, right? That true level, the highest form of understanding, is because I I learn every day that they're actual unique beings of massive worth. You see, and when a child hears that, they know that there's something different, something different. You know what I mean? You know, it isn't just because it's that I had them, so now I got to take care of them and shit. You know what I mean? Right? Because again, I knew this a long time, and it didn't work out where the mothers of my children were so accepting of this. Obviously, it we're thin, But I always knew that I would be a father that wouldn't always have those the the greatest amount of financial success. You know, I always knew that the fields that I wanted to engage in though would always leave me wanting in that area. You know, a writer that actually writes. You know, a writer that writes about that won't write about particular things, that makes choices. You know what I mean? Chappelle says, David Chappelle said one time, you know, the integrity sandwiches. You know what I mean? The mothers of my children weren't so into integrity sandwiches after a while. You know what I mean? And you know, children shouldn't have to suffer the integrity sandwiches. But in this life, the way I saw it as a young man, very idealistic, right? And idealism that hasn't really left. I have to admit, it hasn't really left. Um, I always thought that there's not only a bigger level of oppression awaiting, but then bigger things that we must achieve. And you know, if you look at what's going on with COVID and go into the deeper histories, like I gave Self-I Bill, who sent these questions, the book, The Real Anthony Fauci, the expose book that is about 800 pages with over 2,000 references from verified sources, you know, usually their sources, you know, like their journals, their media, all of that, exposing the devilishment behind all this that is years and years in the making. Um, that's what I idealistically prepared them for. You know what I mean? But I think the child's value. You know what I mean? And just like I deal with the student, one of the major goals of the classroom here is to not show you that you're God. I mean, that's once you become a student, you start studying. You'll figure that out. If you really get into your lessons on all levels. But a major goal of my classroom that you know I added to it that is very unique to the teachings at Allah School of Mecca, because I overtly added, is to find your talents, to expose your talents, the unique things you have. And I spent a lot of time teaching always teaching my daughters that you may not always know what it is. You have to engage in many things before you know what it is. You know what I mean? And you are not without value because you haven't found them yet. You know what I mean? That's what obviously my littlest one is learning, because she's just 8. And at the peak of finding them, this is where my oldest daughter is exploring them now that she has found them, and going on, you know, to cooking school, the Culinary Institute of America, where she's, question, what initially motivated you to study various sciences and begin to teach the commonalities of them? The main reality is that I was always on the periphery, right? People telling us that Puerto Ricans are black, but they're not really black. Puerto Ricans did hip hop, but they're not really hip hop creators, even though they were there at the beginning and they did this at the beginning and they did that at the beginning. All of these different things that led me initially in my quest to get a deeper understanding. I didn't want to just be the simplified we're combinations of a Spaniard, uh, Taino, African, and that wasn't good enough for me because it's incomplete. The Spaniard is not really a white person; it's a half original man, and that half original man though was civilized and used that civilization for devilishment right before he conquered. Right? That's the Spaniard's history. That's in a nutshell, really quick. Right? Right? Infused with the blood of the Moors, they chose devilishment. The ultimate half original conquerors are the Spaniards. The original people that were here, right? Part of those 2 million Indians, the original Taino Arawak peoples. And then those Africans that are brought here, the other original people, right? That are brought here, right? These are the things that led me to say, look, there has to be a more definitive thing instead of saying this, right? And then I was learning martial arts nearly at the same time that I started to learn, right? And that takes on disciplines of really studying the mentalities and the philosophies of the ancients that did it, the Asians, you know what I mean? The Chinese, Japanese, right? So everything was interdisciplinary, everything was cross section, everything was cross sectioning, all of that, intersectional, you know. So that's what led me into seeing the commonalities and all this, because that's what I was doing. That was what I was doing. And if I received or still receive backlash for this approach, I don't think anybody, very few people take this approach, or very few people learn. Um, I'll be honest with you. Most people, most people that think they're teaching the knowledge of self are not as well read as me. You see what I'm saying? And if they are, they're not as experienced with the original elders. You know what I mean? The elders that taught this. You know, there. It's a perfect storm combination that my life has been able to be blessed with. You know what I mean? Right. So if I have a quality understanding of these things I've read, it also has to be noted that I've read a mass amount of it too. You know what I mean? And so I've been and been able to engage in them as a living aspect. You know what I mean? So I think I received backlash because it looks like it comes from other places. Also, too, a lot of people, they say, it goes back to the degree, seventh degree, and the 1 to 14. He makes us think that we're all different. A lot of people think we're all different, and they still have an African American approach of like, it's just us that got the lessons, you know what I mean? And we're the so-called American Negro that got the lessons, and they keep it like that. And they don't really know the experiences of other original people. So they wouldn't really be able to empathize with original people that didn't live a harsh life. And that's why a lot of African Americans clash with even other Africans that are a little bit, they're not necessarily like coming here in gross poverty. Sometimes they come here to explore. You know what I mean? Not to have a decent life from the horrible when they were living, like a lot of Latin America and right, and the Caribbean, right, the English or the Latin Caribbean, but actually just explore like the possibility of just do greater things, and that's not a vantage point that we are used to, you know. So finding the commonalities in all these different things is a difficulty for most, you know what I mean? And most people aren't very well read, you know what I mean? Most people haven't taught students of different realities, and I think that it's not the disciplines of different realities, it's teaching people from different realities that is not really accepted, you know what I mean? They really don't know about those realities, you know what I mean? That was the last question though on this sheet. um so unless anybody has questions upon those questions or anything else, you know what I mean, that was a lot, you know what I mean, that was a lot. There's great questions, you know what I mean. You guys, I guess it's because of the right, or they're not yeah, that one of the things interesting about teaching online is that I get a lot of questions about the way I've taught. So technically, people are inquiring more about what validates me as a teacher. You know what I mean? Which is one of the first teachings I tell people, to validate who it is that's teaching you. And that's important, you know? That is very, very, very important. You know what I mean? But and I guess it reveals itself to be a long time doing this. So to ask more questions about it is just logical. You know what I mean? Well, Certainly. You know what I mean? Certainly. But again, self I build, great questions. Great questions. You know? Take a moment though. I was um let that process, I guess, and all right. Okay. That's P793. All right, we gotta. I'll be here for about 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? I'll be here about 15 minutes. Really, next week, I definitely want to be at a law school. It has been very hectic for me, and things only become more challenging because of this whole COVID thing. You know what I mean? I'm not really worried about teaching in the classroom and everything like that, but it's the mandates that really constrict. You know what I mean? So they slow down other things I'm doing, if that makes sense, without getting too detailed about it right now. Rules and regulations. Hey, it's the equality day. I haven't gotten many builds on equality, and it's not an easy degree, even though people think. And I'd love to see some builds on it from you all, without telling me that equality is to be equal in everything, which is like, that's going to give you the big X, you know, because that's not what it means. We only got a few minutes left here, so let me know. Let me hear some builds. Let me read some of these builds here. That way we can analyze, you know what I mean? Where we're at. Also, too, the homework assignment. If you want to be a student of mine, you got to email me. You know what I mean? Certain people of me, or like Micah, emailed me, and I'm going to send you some stuff. Where you're at as a student, what you're expecting, and I can give you something even more useful. Okay. Oh, is that no, no, that hasn't been the case, not really. Where I live right here in Staten Island, no, obviously I don't really have to wear a mask to like do my training or anything like that. People don't really like that, you know what I mean? And in this area, in this neighborhood, people already know me really well, especially where I train. But I don't think so. I don't think that it's been less restrictive, you know? Malik, what do you mean by inferred in 35 to 50 years? Because in general, 35 just means a lifetime, that they have to spend a lifetime learning this. You know what I mean? And doesn't mean that it'll take them a lifetime. It means that they have a lifetime of showing that they are worthy of it. So in essence, they're never validated completely. They're always having to prove it somehow. You know, so that's what that means. I don't know if that answers your question though, because it's a little incomplete. So I don't know. A lot of red areas don't care for masks. Yeah, I think I was talking about the mask. I don't know if it gets through to everyone in my family, but the masks don't really block viruses. Like they're not going to block a virus. And the more you use a mask for a long period of time, the more you're taking in too much carbon dioxide, um, and at the same time also um, collecting bacterial flora from your mouth in one area and breathing it over and over again, which is causing more problems. So you're making yourself weaker wearing a mask all the time. So you have to get fresh air. If you're gonna wear a mask, you have to get out, you have to get air, you have to constantly, and I literally wear it because I can't get on the ferry, I can't move around in the store, I can't go anywhere without it. So, and honestly, I don't really cover my nose the majority of the time because it doesn't work. It's your immune system that's going to keep you healthy. It really is. And like I said last week, simple. I think the stuff Substance 18 gave at the beginning when he was talking about the black elderberry and all those things. But if you want nutrients, the major nutrient, especially in the winter, vitamin D. So you couple that with your B complex, regular regular taking of vitamin C throughout the day, small amounts, right? Gauging it properly, right? And gain more and more that you could withstand, right? Your antioxidants, your essential B vitamins, vitamin D, and some chlorophyll. You know what I mean? And then all the other things that the brother was meant. Elderberry, the sea moss, the black seed oil. That's great. You know what I mean? But it's such an easy way to fool people because you think like, oh, if I don't want to get sick, then I just cover this, right? But it doesn't block, it doesn't block anything. You know what I mean? It's really a detriment when used over time. So, you know, right? Equality deal with give one the opportunity, not to say if I have a billion acre, you should have the same. It's showing how to get there and achieve it. I would agree. I would agree. I would agree. And that would be equality in teaching, right? Oh, Malik, yeah, why the duration? Yeah, it's just symbolic of a lifetime. You know, no matter certainly the farther you go back, 35 to 50 years is an entire lifetime. You know, and even still today, where lifespans are longer, it's still the bulk of a life. So that means that they're always under the sword. That they're always they're never you're never 100% comfortable. That they cannot violate, and that's really the answer. The truth of it all. So you know, right? I guess I assumed your question, and I got it. Anyway. Do for self. Peace. I see, you said, I see equality as having equity, meaning being fair and partial. Very good, Bill. I have to be mindful of my justice and not to jump to conclusion. Deal with everything equally instead of assuming. Very good, Bill. See, this is when the build has principles. And so now, do for self. When you build, when you're living life, um, it's going to have an application. It's going to apply immediately. 7930, you said practically applying proper balance based on discernment with all things taken into careful consideration individually and specifically in their proper order. All right. I see that. I see it. See it. Mhm. I always like to see balance. Balance is a word that I use a lot when I build on equality. You know what I mean? You said taking proper time to provide appropriate results. Balance. Balance. Right? I agree. I agree. All right. With that said, we're at the 3 hour mark. So, again, my goal is definitely to be at a law school in Mecca next week. So build. That's peace. 7930. But keep building. Email me. You all know the email because I'm gonna put it in right now. Um, right, and continue to work to define how it is that you will learn as an online student and make this online teaching a valid experience that it may not capture the validity that people expect out of learning it one-on-one, but it can show that it comes right there close. So when you go out there you can say, hey, I was taught by Sunez, and that's going to come when you contact me directly. You know what I mean? Not just keeping it to watching and even engaging, right? Which is all great, but a lot of great questions, a lot of great builds here. All right. So until next week. All right. Keep planning. Keep setting off this year. Right. This victory year. All right. Peace.